This is Ed Pullen, your host at the Banter podcast, recording this episode from our hotel in Merzouga, Morocco. Merzouga is a tourist sort of stop on the edge of the Sahara Desert, where we stayed last night and got up this morning. Today's been by far our shortest and one of our most pleasant days of birding. We had a great day, had a quick breakfast, and got out. And today, instead of being in our van, our bus, we were in 4 different four-wheel drive vehicles with 4 different drivers. It was just Bruce and me and our driver, another Mohammed, in our SUV, and the other 11 were in the other 3 SUVs. Bruce got our car because his back's bothering him, and he got the front seat, and we were each carrying scopes, so there were just 2 of us. So we had luxurious, or relatively luxurious accommodations. I had the whole back seat to myself with our scopes, and Bruce had the front seat and our driver, and the 4 drivers that took us around. It was really an interesting experience. They were going at nice rates of speed, 60, 70 kilometers per hour a lot of times through the little 2-track sort of roads. And the roads were not necessarily one path or one 2-track to get places. There were often 3 or 4 parallel tracks. So we'd be zooming through the desert, and one guy would take a shortcut and zoom around and cut in front of the next. And we were having it was fun to watch the drivers, boys will be boys sort of play with their SUVs zooming us around to the various places. The first place we went this morning was just a spectacular place called Davet Shrij, Davet-Srij, which is a seasonal, I think, but most of the year wet lake that floods in the winter and dries up as the summer goes on. And it was just terrific. We think there were 1,500 to 2,000 greater flamingos there, and just a wide variety of shorebirds. We had black-winged stilts, a lot of stilts, a good variety of shorebirds, and primarily just a fabulous time. It was cool in the morning. It was a nice breeze. We spent probably an hour and a half searching for different things there. One of the highlights was cream-colored courser, which is cream-colored courser. What am I talking about? A spotted sandgrouse. We had cream-colored courser later in the day. Spotted sandgrouse, which were coming down to the water to feed and flying around. We saw just a handful of those, but they're quite a spectacular bird. And we got much nicer looks than we had at the other sandgrouse the other day, crowned sandgrouse and black-bellied sandgrouse. So black-bellied, we got a nice look, but these were really nice looks. They flew right by. I could not get my camera to pull the trigger on them, and didn't get pictures, but had nice looks. Had them both standing and flying around. And saw green shanks and red shanks and all sorts of nice birds there. But mostly it's just cool to see the desert in the distance. It isn't often you can see flamingos in the near ground and camels in the background. It was just pretty cool experience. We had really fun there, spent some time, and from there we headed out into the desert. Our next life bird was a brown-necked raven, which just flying overhead. Looks pretty much like our common raven in the U.S., but in just the right light you can see a brown tinge to its neck. And we went to a bunch of spots. We got desert warbler, which was just a cool little warbler, just sort of flitting around. Doesn't have a strong flight, kind of a weak flight actually, and it was just sort of flitting here and there. I think we had a breeding nest right nearby because it would keep bringing food to a bush, and that was really fun. And one of the highlights of the day was seeing an Egyptian nightjar. Nightjars, for those of you who aren't avid birders, are birds that fly around primarily at night with their mouths wide open and scoop up bugs out of the air. And they have a fluttery sort of flight. But they're pretty good-sized birds. I'd say 11 or 12-inch birds. And in the daytime, they just find a roost, usually on the ground, almost always on the ground, and in a place where they camouflage perfectly and they're almost invisible. So they're really hard to find if you don't know where to look for them. But our guide Mohammed has a network of Bedouin shepherds in the area, families that just live off the land, and they keep an eye open for these. And he and the drivers of the SUVs made their calls around to the Bedouin community, and sure enough, one of them had a nightjar. And so we looked at one place, and we zoomed over to this other place, and this woman was there. and she pointed, and sure enough, there was a nightjar under a bush. They like shade, and so you just look for, these bushes are anywhere from 1.5 to 3 or 4 feet tall, and the shade is not much because the sun's right overhead, and this bird's just laying in the shade. There's almost always two in there where there are a pair, and the group got great looks. And turns out I'm not really a photographer, but I'm the only one who really has a digital camera on the trip. And so I am the de facto photographer on the trip. So they had me walk up to the bird and get reasonably good photos, I hope. So I'm going to share my photos at the end of the trip with everybody, and that should be fun. But nightjars are always really, really cool, and this was a lifer nightjar for everyone. And the last stop of the day was for a Pharaoh eagle owl. Eagle owls are a lot like our great corned owl. I think they're in the same genus, and they are pretty much isolated in areas, and Pharaoh is the eagle owl in this area. And Pharaoh eagle owl was on its roost just above a nest in a crevasse a big crack in a cliff. So we went to this escarpment au sud-ouest, the southeast escarpment of the Tinaras area. Escarpment au sud-ouest de Tinaras. And that was really always fun to see an owl. So we got to see the owl, and we finished about 4:30 today. So we came back to the hotel. I've been for a swim. I had a beer. It was just really nice to just relax for an afternoon. So all is well with our group. Bruce's back is feeling better. Everybody's in good spirits. We had kind of a late afternoon off. So it's still an hour and a half till dinner, and we are pretty excited about just relaxing for an afternoon after fairly rigorous travel and birding pretty much every day the trip so far. Had a nice chance to talk to Heather this afternoon. Heather Balish is Marcus Ronig's wife, and I know Marcus a lot better than Heather, so I got a chance to talk to her. Heather and Marcus have birded Mexico a lot. I'm hoping I can get her to come on as a guest sometime, but I haven't asked her yet. I don't know her all that well, but I think I will. And she would be, she's very eloquent, and she would be a good guest on the show. I'm hoping I can talk her into it. But anyway, heard about their Mexico travels. They've been going to Mexico for many years, almost every winter, and have a lot of experience in birding Mexico and know a lot of the guides. And I've learned a lot about them, a lot about, maybe how I'll bird Mexico in the next few years. So I'm excited about that. And overall, another great day. Looking forward to dinner and a great night's sleep. And tomorrow, another day in the desert. Target birds for tomorrow are going to be desert sparrow and fulvous babbler. Babbler is not a great name for a word. Fulvous babbler. They apparently act a lot like our thrashers. They run around on the ground, and you just have to see them. And we've done a bit of walking and looking so far. Haven't come up with a fulvous babbler yet, but hopefully tomorrow. Anyway, we're going to lobby Michael to get out a little earlier and beat the heat. And we've got one more day in the desert before we start working our way back with a couple more days to get back to the airport. So until next time, from the desert in Morocco, the Sahara Desert in Morocco, this is Ed Pullen, your host on the Banter podcast. Until next time, good birding, good day.